All right, Chance, let's get right to it. We talk so much about team identity. So let's go ahead and ask the question, who are these 2026 Cincinnati Reds? Well, so far they haven't scored much. In fact, only one team in baseball has scored less this early in the season. They're not exactly the running red legs yet. We haven't seen them tearing it up on the base paths this early. Middle of the pack also for home runs. So those are just some of the things that stand out. But after a sweep in Texas on Sunday, they've won 2 of 3 series, and the games they've won have been close games. I repeat, they are winning close games. How much of all this fits or doesn't fit maybe into what you thought they might be at this point?
Well, they planted their flag, and by they, I mean Nick Kroll, Brad Metter, Terry Francona, all the way on down. They wanted to make this a pitching and defense team, and they made decisions, the Brian Lux trade, draft decisions, leading them to pick guys like Rhett Lowder and Chase Burns, who we're going to talk a lot about. They did all this stuff, like the scheme change that Terry Francona brought in place to try to win with pitching and defense. Yes, they need to hit more. Yes, I'm concerned about the starting pitching depth. And as a whole, I think you'd like that middle relief core to take the next step. Maybe today was the start of that, but there are some things they're good at. And this feels like a good team, specifically if you could guarantee Green and Lodolo coming back healthy. This would start to feel like a very good team. Not quite there yet, but I don't think you could have felt like they played to their strengths more over the first 9 games.
It's been fun. It's just 9 games, but 6-3 through the first 9 games. One of the best starts to a season for the Reds in some number of years so far. And what stands out to me as much as anything else when we talk about results is going back to winning close games. Winning close games now, it can change your team when that happens like it has early in the season for the Reds, because answering that question now early in the season helps create a belief in a team that can stick. We've all seen it. We've also seen the reverse. You've seen a team not have that success early in the season, and then they chase it and they can't find it, or they find it sporadically. I think winning close games and doing it now is a big plus for Terry Francona and the 2026 Cincinnati Reds early in the season. Welcome to Power Stacks, proud members of the Growler Podcast Network. We're also proudly presented this season by Joseph Toyota of Cincinnati. Baseball season's back. We got long innings, big swings, a lot of hope on every pitch. But around here and at Joseph Toyota, they know that rhythm. Some nights are a grind, some nights are fireworks, but the teams that win are the ones with the right lineup and the right people in the dugout. That's exactly how the team at Joseph Toyota approaches things. There's no rebuilding year, no waiting for next season, just a roster of experienced pros who know their positions and show up ready to perform every single day. So whether you're stepping up to the plate for a new Toyota, maybe you're looking to trade in your current ride or just exploring your options, the guys at Joseph Toyota can do all that. They have a lineup built to deliver. It is the right people in the right roles, making sure every customer gets an all-star experience. So while you're listening to Power Stacks and keeping score with the Reds, remember there's a hometown team working just as hard off the field. It is Joseph Toyota, a championship lineup ready when you are. Chaz, big picture on Texas. Reds had a little bit of a sour feel from the Pittsburgh series at Great American Ballpark. They won a single game. What changed in Texas? The environment is different. The challenge is different. What stood out to you about the way they answered that challenge?
They played very clean baseball, and they played clean baseball against Pittsburgh too, but situationally in basically every way except hitting, because they didn't, I think they stranded like 10 runners today. And take out one out on the bases by Elly in the series finale. There were so many moments where the Reds situationally were exactly what you were looking for. Relievers coming in and throwing strikes. Guys like Burns and Lowder throwing first pitch strikes and working ahead in the count. Some very, very important defensive plays. I think of Benson. I think of Myers. I think of a double plays. I think of maybe the defensive play of the weekend was Jose Trevino on a ground ball in front of him in Saturday's game, and then base running. Elly going first to home on a run and hit, not a hit and run, but you know what I'm trying to say there. Today, or really yesterday and today, some moments McLean had on the bases. Like, they did a lot of that stuff that good teams do and that the Reds want to do. And then that was all backed up by some incredible pitching this weekend, which really is what carried them over the top.
And that's where we're going to go. We talked a number of. I'm glad you brought up, some of the directives for the season, the pitching and defense, because we talked last year. Clean baseball kind of became a buzz phrase for Terry Francona and the Reds on the pre and post game show. Sam and I talk about clean baseball, dirty uniforms was kind of the right recipe for this team. They've played clean baseball so far, enough to the point that they've been able to get it done so far, 3 series in. You teed up the pitching, and that's going to lead me into the dramatic tease, if you please, because pitching is what we have on this show. The Reds have been tested in different ways so far. They've more than passed that test early this year. Also, anybody sing the Wake Forest fight song? Do we know that? Might be a new favorite in Reds country, right?
My mom went to Wake Forest.
Did she?
Yeah.
You've waited this long to drop that in. I'm
She's
sure she
fired
knows.
up about this.
She knows the
very
fight
fired up
song.
about
Okay.
this.
Okay.
Da 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 da. Go Deeks.
It's my favorite so far. That might be catchy. We might have to use that again. And maybe Mom makes an appearance, a guest appearance, just for some Wake Forest representation, because that might be big in Cincinnati this summer. All that's on the way, but in the leadoff spot, as promised, as we get into this pitching conversation, we're going to work a little bit backwards. In the rundown, we had kind of state of the Reds rotation and what's going on right now with the injuries and who stepped up. We're going to work backwards a little bit because as we talk on Sunday, post-game after the sweep in Texas, you can't get away from Chase Burns. You just can't get away from starting this conversation with Chase Burns. You tweeted on Sunday, early in the game, I might add, this is a buy a ticket to come watch Chase Burns game. Why did you know that? When did you know that? Specifically, what was worth the price of admission with Chase Burns on Sunday in Texas?
There was I guess it was the first batter he faced, an elite slider that got Nimmo. And literally, I wrote that in my notebook at the time, like, you could tell very quickly that it was that kind of day. I talk a lot about 2 things with Chase Burns. First, and not to get too, I talk about his hips, like the way he rotates on the mound is a combination of powerful and in control when he's rolling. And here I go. The hips don't lie. And it's a Shakira song. But in all seriousness, like, you could tell that his mechanics were locked in a way where he was ready to hum. And then you combine that with something that I learned from Derek Johnson. The big thing with Chase is he is so twitchy. They just need to get him to slow down and to stay in that consistent rhythm and be in that mode where he wasn't getting too amped up, because that's when the command gets away from him. There was just a feel that Burns had today from how he was moving and how he was carrying himself between pitches. I started taking notes in the first, second, fourth inning. Like this, it was kind of obvious that this was going to be a day where Chase Burns showed why people in this organization think he can be an ace.
This conversation is kind of going to be packaged around Lowder and Burns because of the role they've been thrust into right now, given the injuries to Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo. And I thought it was great. Before we even go deeper in the conversation, you pointed out we haven't seen a rotation yet that includes those pitchers together and healthy at the same time. That's kind of a tantalizing thought, even with the limited experience and the limited things we've seen from Lowder and Burns so far. What if they get back and you get back to a Lodolo and Lowder and Burns and Green? Those are real possibilities that you can allow yourself to think about right now.
It's not even just that. Like, Nick Lodolo and Rhett Lowder have never been in the rotation together.
That's what I mean.
And then Hunter Green and Chase Burns as a duo have never been in the rotation together. Now, kind of the story of the season so far. is Burns and Lodolo, or excuse me, Green and Lodolo are out. And that impacts a lot. That puts more pressure on the defense. That was something Terry Francona told the team in their big preseason meeting. It's led to a bigger emphasis, like the production you're getting out of the middle of your lineup offensively. And then it's thrown all this, you know, responsibility on the plates of Rhett Lowder, who had what, like 7 big league starts before this year, and Chase Burns, who pitched in 13 minor league games before he got thrown into the big leagues ahead of schedule. Like, it's the exact same thing the Reds asked from Green and Lodolo in 2023.
Who?
At least, but at least Green and Lodolo had each had a full year of big league experience under their belts from the 2022 season. In some ways, it's an even more challenging ask what the Reds are asking for Burns and Lowder for a team that's trying to compete. They represent the upside in this rotation more than anyone else, more than Singer, more than Abbott, more than Williamson. And I mean, so far they look like top 10 picks. There will be ups and downs, but they are building some earned confidence.
This is what Cowboys said after the game on Sunday, talking about these two, Rhett Lowder and Chase Burns, and the way that they pitched, and with an emphasis on the word pitched. He said, I expect that from Lowder because that's what he's always been since we've seen him, right? Mature. Um, you've said, I think you've used old school, looks like a veteran pitcher, even though he's not. But what Cowboys said about Burns was he said, with Burns, we've always seen the power pitcher since we've seen him. What he looked like on Sunday was a finesse pitcher with extreme power. And if he can continue to do that, that could get really fun, said Cowboy. Terry Francona talked about the way he spun the ball on Sunday. So just what we're seeing right now, it seems like the progression and the growth for each of them, even though they started at an elevated spot,
And
you're
that's the
already
thing.
starting to notice. So the ceiling was already, you're already right here, and the ceiling is rising for some of the Reds' young stars.
So here we are overreacting to some really, really young guys, two of the literal 10 youngest starters in baseball. But the thing is, they've literally only been good. Rhett Lowder, what he had a 1.17 ERA in 2024 and has, somehow built on that momentum that he generated 2 years ago, and looked even better than he was as a quote unquote first year guy a couple of years ago. Rhett's looked better this year. And then Burns was unbelievably impressive. Just look at the 2025 season that he had. Like, he did it. He checked the boxes. He lived up to the reputation, and then to also be a guy who's clearly continued to develop and improve in those ways. They've each had success and are also each clearly better. Ladder has a much more specific feel for how he wants to set up pitches, and I think he's in position to get more swing and miss. And then Burns is throwing more strikes. His velocity is more consistent. He's reaching back for 100 when he needs it. That's the lesson that Green learned early in his career. Like, they've only been good and they're still getting better. And that's where you want your top 10 picks to be at this stage.
Yeah, you can't miss on those picks. It looks like the Reds have not. So let's take this conversation inside the clubhouse now for the first time. And this trip inside the clubhouse is presented by the advertising suite from RNA Marketing. What is the advertising suite? You may ask yourself. Well, it's a dedicated service network designed to take your brand's digital strategy and performance to the next level. If you want your business to have that professional edge, technical precision, an experienced team that knows how to build your business this way, try the advertising suite from RNA Marketing. Again, it's RNA Marketing. You know the name, they've been around for a long time. Had a lot of success and worked with the Growler podcast network before. This is kind of their new thing. The advertising suite, you can check it out at theadvertisingsuite.com. They can help grow your brand and help build your business. Chaz, get us inside the clubhouse.
So it was kind of Burns and Louder's weekend. Like, if they end up being like an unbelievable duo, like, we'll look back at this weekend. It's also the first time that Burns and Louder this, last 2 weeks has been the first time that Burns and Lowder have ever been together in a starting rotation. And that includes college because they were at Wake Forest in different times. So post game in the clubhouse, I went to Tyler Stevenson and basically said, "Hey man, these two guys are pretty special." Here's what Stevenson had to say about Burns and about Lowder. Obviously, Hunter and Lodolo go down. How big has it been just to have Chase and Rhett step up the way they have to start this season?
Yeah, huge. I mean, they're going to be a big part of this franchise moving forward. And we got a taste of what Lowder was a couple years ago. He's healthy, and yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fun to watch what he does. And then obviously Burns, just with all the hype last year, and to be efficient, and it's like last year is like he would kind of be hitting his pitch count in the fourth, fifth inning, and to see the growth and what you go into the seventh inning, just limiting mistakes, throwing more strikes, and putting guys away when you need to. So, yeah, two special arms, and I'm glad that they're here.
You feel like just their talent can help them play big roles, right? Kind of
For sure.
like Hunter and Nick did when they were rookies.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, and for them to be here and be a part of this, and there's so much for them to learn. Like, just look from when these guys first got called up to where they are now. Like, it's not a finished product, and it's going to be exciting once they do, because they're already really talented.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Appreciate it. It's the age-old question with the Reds, in the last 5-10 years, balancing developing versus winning. And to say it again, it reminds me a lot of Hunter and Nick. Technically, it was their second year in 2023 for a team trying to win, having to lead that rotation, or at least represent the upside of that rotation. And that is a huge ask. And how much Burns and Lowder are able to live up to that test is going to be a defining moment at the start of the season. They need those guys to pitch deep into the games because of the structure of the Reds pitching staff. They need those guys to stay healthy, which is, obviously something they haven't done yet in the big leagues because they haven't done anything in the big leagues in terms of, they've only had cups of coffee so far. But these guys can really pitch. And we'll hear a couple small examples today, but I have gone around that clubhouse and give you long examples of how everyone in there just thinks these are two dudes.
That cup of coffee reference you made is not going to last very long. These guys are going to be around for a while. And that trip inside the clubhouse, brought to you by the advertising suite from RNA Marketing, a specialized network that handles all the heavy lifting of digital strategy so business owners like you can focus on running the company, doing the other stuff you need to do. They can take care of your digital strategy. Go to the advertising suite.com. They support us. They support the Cincinnati sports community. Go see how they can support your business goals. Hearing from Steve-O. Good to see the big swing from Steve-O on Saturday. He needed that. Reds needed that. And this is not the show about offense, even though we pointed out the fact that they're winning without scoring many runs. The reason that's happening is defense and pitching, and that's where we are right now. So let's get to a manager that is, Tito came back to the game because he always says, I missed being around the guys, and I missed my staff members. I missed getting to know a team like he has the last season and a little bit in Cincinnati. Every manager loves when guys come to their team and you get to see them blossom. And again, we're not getting ahead of ourselves too much on Lowder and Burns, but he's watching. Those guys right away when you see them. I think somebody like Terry Francona has a feel for someone early when they see him. How is he reacting to having to lean on young pitchers like Lowder and Burns because of the injuries? And there's some managers that have reputations, perceived or otherwise, for, hey, we want to stay away from the kids. We want the veteran guys. Where's Tito on this?
Today was a step in that journey and a part of that evolution. Now, Burns didn't make it out of the seventh. He allowed that game-tying homer in the seventh, the only run he allowed all day. But the fact that he stuck with Burns for that seventh inning, and I think Tito would do it again, was a reflection of Burns' importance and of what Burns has earned. This is just what it's going to have to be, until Lodolo comes back, and then especially until Green comes back. And there's a part of that's not great. Probably the way this Red season would spiral the quickest is if there's another injury or two in the starting rotation, because I'm genuinely concerned about the Reds pitching depth right now. And it all then circles back to the point we keep making. That just puts so much importance on what you're going to get out of Burns and Lowder. You just need these guys to be really good now. And they've been really good so far. And you know, Tito, so let me tell the story this way. Chase Burns in spring training was on the same schedule as Brady Singer. And coincidentally, the Cactus League office had the Reds play literally a split squad game every time it was one of their days to pitch. And so Tito ended up always going to the road game. I went to the road game usually to see Burns because Singer was the veteran, Burns was the one who had to travel. And so I talked to Tito after all of Burns' spring training starts, and Burns went on his own journey over the course of the spring. He was someone we asked about a lot. Tito was more excited just in terms of the energy he had discussing Burns after not his win, but his game and the Reds win today, than anything I can remember from Tito talking about Burns at any point over the course of the spring or, of course, the early young season. So what I can't share is the smile on Francona's face, but here's a quick soundbite of what Tito had to say about Chase Burns following today's game.
Good. If he pitches like he didn't get the win today, if he pitches like that, he's going to get a lot of wins. I mean, that's pretty special. Everybody sees the velocity, but he's spinning the ball, and it was hard to see for both teams today. So if you change speeds, it really gave the hitters fits.
There's a lot that Chase can throw at you, even if it is 2.5 pitches. But hey, there was that changeup, he had the changeup to strike out Smith in the third inning. He threw some filthy changeups today. So that's something that has the manager getting excited.
Something else that has him excited, certainly now that we circle back to Lowder. And I go back to when the season started, we said, with Chase Burns, we saw Chase Burns last year. So to take a step and to see him again this soon after he helped the Reds in September, that wasn't as difficult to process mentally as it was, oh, yeah, I remember how good Rhett Lowder was because he missed the whole season. So the context for Lowder is different. It wasn't Tommy John for Lowder, but he missed the season, and he didn't compete, and he didn't pitch. But here he is, and what did you say about Rhett Lowder? He's the player. I had it written down. I know you said it, so
something about him.
You said a lot of things about him, but, well, you know what you said about him. Essentially that he's an old school player, pitches like a veteran, even though he's not a veteran. That's what's shown up so far in the times that he's been on the mound, and it's shown up so far this season.
Rhett had a very interesting matchup on Saturday. And it's all right. So Burns on Sun. So, all right, start over. The Rangers don't chase a lot. They're a smart, selective team. Chase's stuff is that good that he just dominated and got the swing and miss and did whatever he wanted anyway because his stuff is that good. I think Rhett's stuff is very, very underrated, and I think we can circle back to that. But Lowder, without the 80 grade stuff that Chase Burns had to find all these other ways to sequence and to work and be efficient. He had to find all these other ways to get bad swings against a lineup that doesn't take bad swings. Oh, and on top of all of that, Rhett described his outing on Saturday as a day where he wasn't at his best and he had to grind through. And he still, had a terrific, terrific, terrific start. They operate very differently, Burns and Lowder. But the fact that they were both able to get to the same place, with Chase, it's easy to understand why, because just watch. With Rhett, it's all the nuance. It's all the subtleties. It's all the mix and sequencing. And that's what's made him effective. And I believe literally every start he's ever made in the big leagues. Just real quick, here's some of what Rhett Lowder had to say after his start on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, they don't chase a ton as a team all the way through. So a lot of I think all my strikeouts were looking. So I knew I had to be good with 2 strikes and not waste a ton of pitches because they weren't going to swing out. So yeah, just being good with 2 strikes no matter what pitch it was.
Was there a sequence today that you were proudest of how you executed?
None come to mind. I feel like Guys on with traffic. Well, I think it was the second inning or first inning. It is the first and second, but I felt pretty good about some of those pitches I executed in the stretch. That longer at bat to Seager, I felt pretty good about. So just kind of just commanding with 2 strikes, kind of like what I said.
Lowder had to rely on those called strikes. Burns just swing and miss after swing and miss. And that's the beauty of this too, is like you at home as you watch ball with your friends or family or whoever, like you can be a Burns guy, you can be a Lowder guy, you can pick which type of profile you think is more fun and fits your personality. But they're both good and they both look the part.
Andrew Abbott has seen and felt expectations like this before. Now he's your opening day starter. He's an all-star. What's his take as he watches some of these younger guys do what they've done?
Andrew was the first one to tell me in spring about how good Rhett Lowder was about to be. Like he called that shot. He didn't need to call Burns his shot because that was again just watch him. But I remember specifically a conversation I had with Spring about Rhett. So I circled back to Abbott and kind of asked some similar questions. What stands out? What do you think of what he's doing? And they are kind of similar pitchers. Obviously, one's a lefty, one's a righty, but they just know what they're doing so much. And they both can throw 4 pitches for strikes in any count. And that goes a long way. And so because of those similarities, I circled back just to talk with Abbott about Lowder. Here's what the Reds opening day starter had to say.
Everything in the zone, competing, getting after guys, just, I mean, we know I saw him pitch in college. I mean, he's doing exactly what he is. And I think that's the important thing is he's never lost, what makes him special. And that's what needs to be kind of interpreted from that. It's like, hey, we're not changing everything. Like, we have an approach. We have what makes you good, like be good at, like be great at what you're doing. And I think that like just the confidence, like the aura, I guess would be a good word to describe it when he's pitching. And since it's even been a long time since he's been on the mound in the game, I think that makes it even more impressive is the fact that, no shot, not shying down, and just coming at you like, this is what I got, here we go. Just major respect, and like he's earned the moment. I know he's enjoying it, and hopefully it'll continue.
It's a good balance for the Reds rotation to have. You got Lowder, you got Abbott with his skill set, you got the flamethrower, you got the durability guy, and Singer, you got Williamson, a lefty who does a lot of different things well. I'll say it again, I'm concerned about the depth. And this is a team that still would really need Green and Lodolo to pretty much return as soon as they're able to and be themselves right away. But as Brandon Williamson said, for the skeleton crew rotation, we're not too bad either. And I know Williamson struggled in his first start, but I'm looking forward to watching him on Monday. Each of them has genuinely been an interesting and an intriguing guy to track over the course of the year.
When you say depth, just below the pitchers we're seeing right now at AAA, you've got Chase Petty, Julian Aguilar, right? Where that would be considered the next level of depth. Am I right?
And I make this point because like what the Reds rotation had to prove this year was that it could stay healthy, and so far not great. But they still have guys, specifically the young guys in Lowder and Burns and Williamson, who have to show they can do it for a full season. Like you mentioned, the names Petty and Aguilar are next. Really, Jose Franco's next. He's a fascinating Red to me right now. Like he had a nice big league debut. He is next on the depth chart in theory, but he's pitched 2 innings in 2.5 weeks because he's been a long man in the big leagues. Terry Francona spoke as well about the fact that you just can't have Franco be your long man all year because that stunts his development. You need him to be pitching and getting in that rhythm and that routine. And, every day that Franco's up in the big leagues is a day that he's not developing and building and improving as a starting pitcher. And as a starter, Franco needs a third pitch. He needs that changeup to come along. And he also needs to continue improving the slider. So you got that. Petty just really needs some swing and miss stuff. And he's coming off a bad start. He's a guy who really needs to continue his development. And then Aguilar is still getting his feet wet coming back from Tommy John surgery. So the rotation depth is the most concerning part of the 40-man roster to me. Behind the guys I mentioned, the rest of the AAA pitching starting rotation, is minor league journeyman. All of this is to say the Reds really, really, really need the 5 they have now to stay healthy.
Going back just to wrap up kind of this conversation about where they are right now, Nick Lodolo showed up in Texas, and the plan originally was that Nick Lodolo was about to pitch maybe in Miami. He showed up in Texas. I know you talked to him about the blister. Is everybody is anyone saying or feeling anything differently other than absolutely we don't know? I mean, are there any answers here other than we don't know, we're working on it?
Send your blister remedies to our Power Stack team. They're trying everything, man.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're supposed to be. I shouldn't say it like that, but to use a Hunter Green comparison, like Hunter Green got the bone chips removed, and now he is going through a cut and dry rehab and recovery process where the injury
Right.
is healed. Lodolo, what are you supposed to do? Um, he's tried what he can try. The Reds are continuing to keep his arm fresh. I think that's really important. He's continued to throw plyo balls, which are, balls that don't have seams. So that's been a way that whenever the blister heals, they can, his arm's not starting from scratch. That's good. But as of what's next for Lodolo, I don't, I asked Francona today. He said just keep throwing the plyo balls.
All right, question for you from Texas. 2 of the 3 games, the roof was closed, right? Sunday was
Yep.
the only day it was open, yeah. And it's not, it's a comfortable indoor environment. What was the deal with Elly De La Cruz and the red hoodie?
He started wearing it in Cincinnati when it was freezing, and he was playing well, and so he just kept wearing the hoodie, and it's like a real hoodie. Like, it's like
Yeah.
that $80 hoodie you'd buy in the team shop, and I said, "Ellie, what's going on, man?" And he said, "It's a good flow," and more power to him. I mean, my read on him is he finds stuff he likes. Like, he was wearing that Reds beanie or fitted wool
Yeah.
cap last year until like June.
Mhm.
He's wearing those brown John Lennon sunglasses. He has stuff he likes and he wears them. And now he's wearing this hoodie.
You're younger than I am, so how would you translate "it's a good flow"? For the older folks in the audience, what would you say what do you
I, I
think he
don't
means?
I don't know that I can translate it because I don't have it. I think that's maybe the best way I could sum up all this.
Okay. Let's do an email question. And again, the email for the show is powerstackspod@gmail. Chaz, this comes from Joe. And first off, really appreciate the podcast. Question is about the closer role. Joe is not a fan of Emilio Pagán in that spot, even though last year was a good year. He feels like, and this is certainly a topic that has come up from the time Graham Ashcraft got here, but he says he thinks Graham Ashcraft is the closer for this team. There's some other things here I'm looking at, specifically Graham and the cutter and slider together, lethal. I mean, it's a great argument, but Graham Ashcraft last year was his first year in the bullpen. Emilio Pagán had an outstanding season. I'm sure we'll have more of these conversations. Maybe it's too early, but watching Pagán right now not look as sharp as he was last season, how do you view the end of game options for the Reds right now?
It's so interesting with Emilio because it feels like he's relying on his splitter more than he ever has. And he's actually thrown some awesome splitters. And then there were 2 games where there was one bad splitter against the Red Sox and then a few bad splitters against the Pirates and then weren't good. It's just really interesting for a guy whose fastball I think will get there but isn't there yet. The fact that he is living and dying, to put it dramatically, with his 3rd best pitch based on how he's sequencing and setting things up. So kind of the mix between that splitter, slider, and fastball is what I'll track with him going forward. Terry Francona said his expectation is Emilio is just going to have to pitch into his velocity during the season because they were cautious with him building him up in spring after he pitched so much last year. And because of how much they expected him to pitch this year, I'm not making any decisions one way or another until, the middle of April, later April, right around the NFL draft. That goes with right field, outfield, closer, all around. Emilio, I thought though there were a lot of positives to like from how he pitched on Saturday.
But the other thing that's come out of the early part of the season is Connor Phillips has gotten that opportunity, and he's had success, and he struggled. Brock Burke suddenly on Sunday shows that that could be an option. And so everything that has happened with some shorter starts, the bullpen use, or maybe somebody like Pagán not throwing as well, quite as well as he did last season. You've seen some other guys in some of those positions, and that's something else, like I said earlier, just about winning close games. When you have success with those types of things, you can build on that. I think secretly that's another silver lining to what's happened so far is other guys have had opportunities that I think that's going to pay dividends.
Now, Phil, and we've told the full Connor Phillips story on the show before and talked about his upside. He has the upside, and then there are the games where the command
Sure.
I mean, today, like he got the job done, but Brock Burke was warming up behind him the whole time. Burke's fastball today was like incredible,
Jump.
like a legitimately really, really good pitch. It's not always there. And he's been a guy who's been 6th or 7th on that bullpen depth chart just based on how I've seen Tito use them over the course of the early part of the season. So the consistency is something that'll have to develop there. You can throw into a similar situation Ashcraft, who has had a phenomenal start to the year, but also had a phenomenal start to last year. And, the grind and the wear and tear and the bullpen routine and all that stuff and how it plays out will be important to track and follow with him. I will say with Graham, it's way too early to have any sort of conclusions. But if there's a player on the team who I've grown, or I don't like to use this as terminology, but who I've bought the most stock in and who I've read the most into in a positive way, how they've looked. Like here's the way to say it. Graham's the guy who's turned my head the most by showing me they can be something slightly different and better than what they were last year. I'd say that's true with him more than anyone else on the roster. And he very much has my attention as a guy who could be ready for more.
He's had lots of people's attention since you kind of saw what he could be in small doses. The ninth inning is different. We all know that. Everyone says it. I've heard Sam talk a lot about that. The ninth inning is different. And he made that point about Connor Phillips when he had the struggles in one of his ninth inning appearances earlier a couple of weeks ago or a week ago. But Graham Ashcraft has always tracked towards being someone that profiles to have the personality, the moxie, whatever you want to call it, and certainly the stuff to be an end of game option for the Reds when that presents itself. But I agree with you. It's been impressive to watch so far this season. That's the email. We're also on X at PowerStacksPod, And I just wanted to say this, Charlie, just thanks to Kate. We heard from Kate. She said her dad was having some health challenges and they listened to the podcast, or her dad listens to the podcast and she does as well. And they talk about baseball, and he's having a better week with rehab. So our best to Kate, her dad, and their family. Thanks for checking out the show, and thanks for letting us know about things like that. Last week's show was Outfield Roulette, and I liked it. What did you want to add about the Outfield Roulette now, based on having another series under the collective belts of those outfielders that Terry Francona has at his disposal?
The most common question I'm getting is what is going on with this Noelvi Marte Will Benson platoon? Because Marte's not good, or hasn't been good yet against left-handed pitching, and he's only playing against lefties basically until today. And Francona acknowledged it's looked like that at times. He said it's a little backwards with how it's gone so far. He recognizes the fact that how it's played out isn't ideal, especially for Noelvi, who hasn't gotten the at-bats he needs in situations he can be most confident in to really get his feet under him in the season. But Terry Francona said that it won't be a platoon. It's a situation that's going to work itself out. I think Noelvi, while he didn't get those chances during the first week of the year, will get a lot more runway during the second week of the year. There were just different factors and different things moving on that maybe led to it looking like a platoon, is basically what Tito said. Now Noel will really get his runway to show what he can do as this team's right fielder against righties more often.
Interesting. Dane Myers played some more in Texas. Will Benson continues to be there, but there are a lot of moving pieces there in the outfield for Terry Francona. How about Only the Best, presented by Joseph Toyota of Cincinnati? All right, first road trip of the year. This can be about the game. This can be about the series. This can be about something you had for lunch, Chaz. Whatever you want it to be, since as we record on Sunday night, best thing you saw since the last time we did this show.
We alluded to it a second ago, Brock Burke. I mean, I could just say the fastball, but I will just say this: the story. He said if you could have asked him, dream up your first save, this would have been it. The Rangers, he won a World Series with the Rangers.
Right.
In 2022, he was one of the best relievers in baseball with the Rangers. They released him in 2024. And you know what? That became a turning point for him. He kind of found that next stage of his career in terms of the type of pitcher he was and has been good genuinely since they released him. But he never got that save chance until today. And he, normally a quiet, reserved guy, he was pretty edgy talking about that save today. And I thought that was pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. What's next for the Reds is the road trip continues in Miami. And going back to roughly the middle of last season, the Marlins have been one of the best teams record-wise in baseball. They're right up there. And I think I was looking to start this season, swept the Rockies, took 2 of 3 from the White Sox. Then they ran into a little bit of a buzzsaw against the Yankees at Yankee Stadium. But as this road trip continues, you got some good juice from the Texas series. What specifically is in the notebook for potential storylines for the next series, which is a 4-gamer against the Marlins?
As I watched him dance to the song Welcome to Miami in the Reds clubhouse, Sal Stewart's excited to go home. And it's his first time playing at home. And that is going to be quite the scene to watch.
There'll be a lot of people. I would imagine the interview requests and the ticket requests. There's going to be a lot of that. Are you curious at all? Do you think, I mean, knowing what we know about his level of confidence and belief in himself and who he is and what he does, but he's 22. He's never done this. How do you think it's going to have an impact on him, or do you?
I don't know. Opening day, he rose to that moment.
Right.
The playoffs, he rose to that moment. And those would be situations. His debut, he was awesome. Those have been when I've seen him most amped up, and he played well. So who am I to say that won't continue?
That series starts on Monday night with Brandon Williamson for the Reds. So we've talked at length about everyone except now a second opportunity for Williamson, whose first start in Cincinnati, didn't go as well. He may have thought at the time that he might not get a second start. Now he does, though. What will you watch for with Williamson?
Just in general, I'm very interested to see the type of pitcher that he kind of wants to be. Like in the big league so far, it's been in 2023, it was pitch to contact, change up, cutter, mix and match, ground balls. Coming back from the injury, he's been able to tap into this velocity and this ride on his fastball and a spin on his curveball, which can let him do more. How does he balance kind of those two different styles of pitcher that he can be, and how does he mold and mesh that into the one Brandon Williamson that he'll carry forward as?
This is a 10-game stretch for the Reds that started with the game Friday in Texas. 10-game stretch, then they have an off day on Monday the 13th in the middle of the next homestand, but no time to catch your breath right now, and they'll take on the Marlins starting Monday night. Chaz, your flow has been good. We were talking about Elly's flow. Your flow has been good. And are you a hoodie guy?
Everyone's a hoodie guy.
No, not everyone.
Okay.
All right, but you've got hoodies, but not in the work rotation.
Not in the work rotation, but I do have some top of the rotation hoodies that I have in my drawers.
Okay, more of we've been down the quarter zip path with you before, and if your golf career ever takes off the way that I think that it might, the quarter zip will serve you better on the golf course. Hoodies aren't really golf course attire, so that's good.
You can wear whatever you want on the driving range. And that's all I've got in terms
Okay.
of that's all I've been good enough to do so far is just the driving range, a judgment-free zone, which is something I like about it.
I have bigger plans and aspirations for you than just the driving range. What about you in Miami? We know
Yeah.
you'll be there. The chalkboard emanates from Miami for the rest of the week. What would you expect? Something else you might do in Miami or you plan to do while you're there? What's your go-to?
The best press box coffee machine in baseball. Elite
Mm,
coffee machine. You got the
mm.
espresso, the cappuccino, whatever you want, they got it. It's really good.
All right. Enjoy South Beach. Enjoy the sunshine. And we'll check in, see if the Reds can keep it going. A sweep in Texas, Miami on deck, and Chaz will be there. For producer Kent, the entire crew, and everyone at the Growler Podcast Network, thanks for checking out Power Stacks. Tell a friend, watch the YouTube, and we'll see you next time. Take care.